Well, welcome. Tonight we're going to look at the world from a conservative view. And we have two of our well-known conservatives from Milford. Why don't we start with introductions?
Thank you, Al. Chris Wilson, Milford School Committee member and Milford Planning Board member.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
I forgot about that. Yes, congratulations. And Ed Bertorelli on the library board, the Housing Authority, and the Geriatric Authority board, and for a number of years involved in state and local and state Republican politics.
So I think we have no choice but to start with what's been plastered in the news, the Trump indictment.
Well, Al, I think I started maybe 3 of the last shows we did this. We'd say, how can you imagine that more has happened? And the first show was one thing, then it was another thing, and then it was another thing. I mean, we were doing the presidential election, the congressional elections, rest, and now we've got this. And you say, what can we say for the next show? Maybe we won't be able to say what's more happened, because this is sort of a profound, interesting, profound dilemma a lot of people are in as to how to take this. From my point of view, the indictment seems to be well crafted, and ironically, I think it's well crafted because they use the ex-president's own words. And apparently, from what I can glimmer, his first attorney, and I forgot his name, didn't turn state's evidence, but he was called in because his notes were, they overruled attorney-client privilege in court. So he quickly realized, I guess, that what he was told and what he represented to the government was false because Trump told him false information. So all bets are off with that. So if your own first lawyer is going to be testifying as to how you were misled, how he was misled, and how he misled the government, that's a pretty compelling case.
Sets a very bad path for him.
Yeah.
I mean, but ultimately, it's Trump headline news, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been in the headlines since he started running for office. He's been in the headlines all through his office, and now he's still maintaining front page
But
news.
what are boil the charges down? It can't be for having classified information at his estate, can it?
Yes.
But wait a minute, our president had it in his garage.
Well, that's
Yes,
different.
but-
So your garage is different than a bathroom, right?
Maybe garage that Hunter had access to, which was scary.
Right.
No, the point is not that he had them there, but that when he was asked to turn them back, he only turned back part of them, and it's clear from this other poor guy who got indicted as well, his body man, as they call it, when he was president. They have a person who was with them, and he's the body man for him. Now, was directed to move boxes around so that when they came to take the boxes, they didn't get them all.
See, to me, this reminds me way back when of Richard Milhous.
Well, that was only a little tape compared to this.
Well,
and by the way, Richard Milhous could have got out of that very easily.
I always believed if he got up in front of the American public and said, "My name is Richard Milhous Nixon. I want to apologize.
Yeah.
I blew it.
Yeah.
It happened under my watch.
Yeah.
I was dumb. I shouldn't have done it. Please forgive me."
But
To me,
yeah.
Americans don't kick dogs when they're down.
No, but the problem is we're also dating ourselves because half the population has really no idea who Nixon is. Given the state of the education system today, they'd read about what MSNBC says about him or whatever. But no, but I think that was the first part. So he wouldn't return them, and then when he did return them, it was only a partial return, and so he still held on to them. Then in addition, I read today, and I don't know, it wasn't the Times, but it was a paper. Remember General Milley? He was the chief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Joint Chiefs of
He might
Staff.
still be there. I don't know. But Trump wanted to do an attack on Iran, supposedly near the end of his term, and Milley opposed it. So some of these things are in response to attack plans that had been made, and Trump kept them. So apparently that's the case. And I guess Trump also said that he knew he didn't declassify some of these documents and it was on tape. So that's the part of the obstruction thing. In other words, he took the documents, he wouldn't return them, and the obstruction was he misled the people as to
So it's
where they
really
returned.
they're going after him for the cover-up, the obstruction.
Well, no, but also the failure to return the documents,
Well, yeah, but
which have been. I mean, look at what Hillary did. Once you can return a document very late, and they'll forgive you, but he didn't return them. So when they raided his place, they
Right, he still had those classified documents,
Yeah.
and I think to your point of just get out in front of it and apologize, well, when has Trump ever apologized for anything or even gave any type of indication, well, maybe I did the wrong thing there, so, I mean, so certainly,
Yeah.
we could
Yeah,
never
yeah.
expect him to,
Yeah.
to do that, so therefore he stuck to his
it's tough 'cause
typical,
I still believe Trump was his own worst enemy.
well,
Right.
His mouth. You know, because
think?
when I
Of
think
course,
about
you think, yeah.
still is.
inflation, I heard today the big announcement that inflation is lower than it's been for 2 years. It's
Wow.
down to 4%.
Lower, so, but when it was 0, well, 1%.
Well, when it was 1.5% for years. I mean, people forget that the inflation jumped during this administration.
But Al, I always say, but Al, with the press we have today, no one's ever going to point that fact out because Trump is right about certain things. The problem is he uses the rightness for the wrong reasons, though, I say. The press is biased, but the problem is obviously biased to the left. But in his case, the fallout from this is going to, as I say, this is a Republican who would like to have a Republican president. It's going to paralyze our candidates because the media is always going to ask them, well, what do you think about Trump? Because they don't want to, I mean, MSNBC and CNN, if Donald Trump went up in a spaceship and never came back, they'd be out of business.
Yeah.
Because today it's wall-to-wall coverage of
right.
Trump did this, Trump did that.
Does
What did
this
he say?
remind you of
Constantly.
Bush?
No, but I'm just saying.
The
but-
first
yeah,
part of Obama administration was Bush. It was like,
yeah.
enough.
But they get away with it.
Yeah.
That's the point. But here, it's going to affect, because Biden damn well knows that if it was anyone else but Trump, there's a good number of those people on there who could beat him. But with Trump in the way, it's better to let the Republicans percolate and whatever. And if anyone tells you on the liberal show that Joe Biden is in a strong political position, he's in a terrible political. But you can only compare that with his opponent. And if it's Trump, he's pretty got much to the bank that he would win the election because
Is
I
Trump
think-
a viable candidate?
well, among the Republican Party, he would.
Well,
be,
no,
but,
no. I'm
Yeah.
talking about come 2024.
No, tragically, no.
I would hope not.
Yeah.
I think he has his loyal supporters, right? That will always be his loyal supporters.
Yeah.
But it just depends on how much of a voice do they have.
Yeah.
And how much can they bring in more support. And
Yeah.
I think that's starting to wane,
Yeah.
you know, basically with these charges, with other things that he says. And I think, again, Trump's age is also going
Yeah,
against him. No,
he's
no
just
different than
turned
Biden's.
77.
Right. So.
Well, of course, Biden is.
I was going to say, but Biden's
No.
a spring chicken.
No, but at least
Right.
Trump's functioning. Biden
Right.
isn't. So.
Right. And I think that needs to be a consideration, right? When
But-
you
but
look
again-
at it, you know, you're
But
not,
is
and
Trump
it's not
sucking-
an age discrimination
Yes.
thing. It's a health and awareness situation, right?
It's the guy with his finger on the world's nuclear.
But when you're
Holocaust.
but
Exactly.
when you're running against Trump, none of that matters because he's so egregious in what he does that you could basically be caught with, you know, oh, Joe Biden announces that he had 50 years ago had an affair with someone. Wouldn't even care because, yeah, I think Trump is sucking all the oxygen out. But the problem is, just like in 16, you had 16 candidates. And he destroyed them all one by one. And the thing, same as here. If he were one-on-one with a candidate like DeSantis and with nobody else,
Right.
I think it'll be a rough and tumble. I certainly wouldn't be any kind of race with Trump because what he said about DeSantis is despicable. He's made remarks that almost go to the ethnic remarks, called him a meatball, I mean, that's just his specialty. And his opponents, I mean, his supporters seem to like that, but I can tell you what his supporters have done in Massachusetts and the state Republican Party has almost destroyed it. So, and I know that, so, for a fact. That chairman we had, Jim Lyons, who was the Trump acolyte, bankrupted the party, was a disaster as the chairman. We lost legislative seats. So at least in Massachusetts wise, I'm sure in a lot of other states, these people aren't a positive force. And they don't reach out to the the women, the suburban women, the people who are, to quote like Governor Baker or Romney, socially conservative. I mean, more economically conservative, but socially
Physically conservative,
but socially
socially aware.
I mean, if like in the last election, the Democrats hung abortion on the Republican Party, and in states like Michigan, it really did a job on us because the Midwesterners just said, "Hey, we're conservative, but don't start going into all this stuff," because it was just too.
But now when you start talking about viable candidates,
Yeah.
DeSantis came on strong. And all of a sudden, I'm not hearing much about him.
No, but again, we're listening to how the media portray things. And just remember, where do you get a fair shake about a Republican in the media? I don't see anywhere. So I don't. No. And also, he's probably doing the thing he has to do is raise money. But remember, when he was the only candidate, and 9 have come in since? I think there's 9 people running. I can't go through the list.
Yeah, and I think it's tough for any Republican candidate to try to generate any type of
With what's going on now.
with what's going on, right? Again, you open up CNN.com, you open up FoxNews.com, the first name that you see is Trump, and then down below, right, as you scroll down,
Yeah.
then you see the candidates and what they might be doing in it, but it's in smaller
Oh, yeah.
print, right? So again, that Trump factor is still affecting the other candidates. I feel like, and affecting very viable candidates that we need to consider
Yeah.
that probably want to do their
Yeah.
best
But
with
now,
distancing
by
themselves
keeping
from
his
Trump.
name in the news, and are the Democrats keeping him on life support? Because to me, if you don't like Trump, just ignore him, leave him alone.
But
Yeah.
Al, that isn't what politics is about. They're going to raise him up so they can knock him down. I won't use the word kill him because we'll get in trouble. But the point is, that's the game. They see him as the prime, weakest person, so they're going to. You can see it from. You'll hear it when the liberals come in. The Republican Party equals Trump writ large. I see stickers people put on posts about the Republicans are for death, for this, for that.
Right.
Now into all the social issues, they're going to kill people who are diverse and so on and so forth. So they depend on Trump. As I said, if Trump disappeared, CNN would have a big problem. They're going to go, well, where'd he go? I mean,
Right. What do we report on
I
now?
mean,
What's our front page story?
today
right?
every
Yeah.
panel,
Yeah.
and they were a assorted bunch of real strange dudes and women,
Yep.
were all about the lamentation. I would like to hear. There's a guy on Jonathan Turley who does Fox News. He's a law reporter. I'd like to hear what he actually has to say about the indictment. I did hear something. He thought it was a very strong indictment. That even if they just prove one charge.
Yeah, they said if any part of this is true.
Yeah. Although then someone else said today, at least Trump isn't dealing with a New York jury or a Delaware jury, so it's dealing with a Florida jury, and obviously the liberals have already started to attack the judge involved because Trump appointed her. That smear campaign has been on CNN
Yeah,
all
that
day.
one I have a hard time with because, you look at justices like Kennedy.
Yeah.
When he was appointed, they had already mapped out how he would vote, and he surprises everybody.
But how about
So
Yeah.
going after the judge because she's had these verdicts, she's had these
Yeah.
positions, that to me is legit. Going after her because she was appointed by Trump just doesn't make any
Yeah, but
sense
have
to
you
me.
ever heard in the Supreme Court a judge who started as a liberal and became more conservative? We never hear that story told. That's what I'm trying to say. There's a storyline here of how they present the valiant judge who was a conservative, saw the light and became a liberal. This particular case, the lady slowed the case down to get a master in because she probably didn't trust the fact that, Biden was allowed to, and I'm going to mix Biden in, he was allowed to have, his papers were shipped to Boston to a lawyer to be able to go through them to tell, I don't know if the lawyer had a top secret security
He
clearance.
must have, or else they would bring that out.
Okay, but they were allowed to review them before they even looked at them. So why wasn't? But again, Trump didn't help himself.
Yeah,
in this.
and going
But
back to
again,
the judge two, I would say, all right, if it's not a Trump-appointed judge, then is it a Biden-appointed judge? Then is it an Obama-appointed judge? Like,
That's all.
sooner or later,
That's all
so
there is, basically.
what side?
Yeah, unless someone's,
is
unless
going
someone's real
to-
old and,
Right.
and precedes Obama, they have to be pretty old.
So no matter what, there's going to be an argument to it. You have to trust that
Yeah,
the justice
yeah.
system
Yeah.
will, the justice is blind, right?
But see, that's why I say go after the judge on merit, on the history. I don't care who puts you there, because once you're there, you're your own person anyway,
Right.
because you're not going to
No.
change for anybody.
Exactly.
But that's part of the agenda to discredit. I'm sure the liberals would have loved to have the trial move to New York, Washington,
Right.
D.C., where you'd never get
Right,
a
where it's a Biden-appointed judge, right?
And a
Like, hey,
jury pool of people.
Of people.
New
Yep.
York City, I think Trump got 12% of the vote or something
Right,
in the
exactly.
election. And District of Columbia, probably 8%.
Right.
So you're going to find.
The governors of Florida and Texas took a radical step to get attention on immigration by shipping people.
Yep.
Good move? Bad move?
Well, Newsom's now threatening to sue Newsom, who has more homeless people. I think Gavin Newsom, he was on Hannity. They did an interview. And I'm surprised Sean, I think he's losing his touch. I would have asked him how many homeless people are in California, because I would guesstimate the population of Boston is homeless, living on the streets in California. And of course, he doesn't do anything about it. But I think it was, because it showed how hypocritical Massachusetts was. Where were they sent to? Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket?
Yeah.
And they were ushered right out of there,
Right.
as fast as they could be. And Mayor Adams in New York is throwing fits, because they're all coming up there. And the
But
reality is,
I don't understand. New York,
yeah,
San Francisco declared themselves amnesty centers.
except when you come, though.
Well, that's my point. I mean,
You're
got-
only in-
It's,
You're
it's,
only-
it's, it's
you're
great
only- yeah.
until you show up and you realize that you don't have the infrastructure in place to support.
But, you're
right?
only in Amnesty
So-
City till the people who come who need amnesty,
Right.
and then
and
you're
they're getting 10% of the flow that Texas is getting.
Exactly.
imagine every
yeah.
day in San Antonio what they deal with.
I can't imagine, right? Just when 1,000 people, tens of thousands of people, right, show up
Yeah,
on,
there's
your,
no control
on,
at the
your,
border.
on your city's doorstep, right?
No,
like,
no control.
what do you do? So when you're trying to tell me when a couple busloads show up into a major metropolitan area, then it becomes
No, and
too
that's-
much on them.
and
Well,
that's
that means
where-
they're strained, right? And
That's
they're
where you
not
sh-
ready
yeah.
to handle it,
That's-
and they're not prepared. So
Well,
so don't speak the
I don't
words
see
if
the
you're not
big
prepared.
pushback from Massachusetts. We're a right to shelter state.
Whatever that means. You could say a lot of things, but what do they
But
mean?
basically, it means if you need a home, we got to give you
Well-
someplace to stay the night.
Well, that's not practical.
And from what I hear, we're definitely looking at opening up some
Hotels.
Well, no, not even some state facilities that have recently been closed down, or not recently been closed down. State facilities that have been closed down, and how do they bring them back online as housing?
And who's going to pay for this?
Well, I think that's the biggest.
That's who's going to pay for them.
In
Right.
my mind, the legitimate complaint is, I mean, look what we're going through at the geriatric center here in Milford. The board is going through Herculean efforts to keep that place going and viable, because the funding doesn't keep up with
Isn't
the
adequate
expenses.
yet.
Right.
You know, when you say it's $300 a day average person, and Mass Health is only paying you $250
Oh, less, yes.
Right.
or less. But I mean, at the end of the day, I have a hard time understanding why we're diverting money that, take care of your family first.
But the thing is, this is where everything in this country is so short-sighted. Every estimate has been, and hopefully it's none of us, that the number of people with Alzheimer's disease is going to double in 20 years. So
Yes.
as we speak, viewers, nursing homes are being closed all over the country because the corporations that run them only go on the bottom line. So nursing homes are being closed all over the country, yet the number of people who are going to have Alzheimer's disease and seriously need a special facility, not just nursing care, but guidance and security, is going to double. So where in God's name, general public, does that make sense? So when people, I just say it because I'm on the geriatric authority, but where does it make any sense that the state doesn't come in? They did do something, a little bump, but at least try and fund whatever. And Milford Geriatric Authority also enjoys the fact that, yes, we could cut staffing ratios to what a lot of places are, but then care would suffer. And so that's the point too. But that's the whole thing about the American system, is that there doesn't seem to be any, this is going to happen and this shouldn't happen, and there's no connect.
Well, I think part of it too is, as we're aging as a population,
Yeah.
50 years ago, this wasn't an issue because most people didn't live. I mean, bless my mother's heart, she lived till 94. Her first 80 some years, she was my mother.
Right.
You know, working in the garden,
Yeah.
totally lucid. The last 4 years, countryside had to take care of her
Yeah.
because we couldn't watch her every minute of every
Of
day.
course not.
So you sit there and say, it's not, as we get better at extending our lifetime, it's just going to get worse because
Yeah.
It comes with a price.
But
right?
where is the attention of the government, instead of building homes for people who are coming across the border?
Right.
Where in the hell is the money to build facilities for our seniors who spent millions of dollars in taxes over the years?
Right.
Oh, by the way, forget about it. You won't remember you're a citizen anyway, or whatever. I mean, that's the misplaced priorities. And you go back to the border. We talked about this at the last show. What happens at the border has come right up to Milford,
Yeah.
and right up to, and we're not the only town in Massachusetts. I'm sure there's 20 or 30 of them who have suitable multifamily housing where this problem has come up. It's affected, obviously, it's affected health and safety in the subtle way because of overcrowding, but it's also affected because of our promise to give free education to everyone. It's affected our literally capacity to have room in the schools. So this immigration thing, beside everything else, is affected. And you can imagine, Massachusetts isn't alone. I mean, obviously, the Midwest, there's all sorts
no,
of
but
places.
think about it. You share the same dilemma as Jeff Hopkins, who runs the emergency room at the hospital, the emergency department. You can't turn anybody away.
Right.
You know, regardless of how a child got to Milford, and I know people have yapped at me saying if they bleed Milford red, we take care of them.
Well, no, that's
You
your
don't have
line.
a choice.
You don't
That's
have a
your
choice,
line.
right? Yeah.
You don't have a choice.
Yep.
But you sit there and say, where is the money coming from? We've been lucky that the last 2 years, thank God, I mean, when you came 2 years ago and said we need 6 million above, my heart stopped.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
but the state came through
But-
at 7.
That
Yeah, but
chapter
the point
70,
is,
right.
the point is not the money fact. There's two problems: the space.
Right.
Money is one thing. The state can throw money at a lot of things. We've seen what that can do. The other problem is how it affects the quality of the education for everybody in the schools, including them, and the immigrants and the average student and the good student. So that's a real concern in Milford. So it's just not an impact of numbers. It's an impact of, yeah, the state could give us money, but if our system isn't working because of the pressure on the teachers, and honestly, the fact that you have to have more people to teach people who are challenged in English, no matter what other language they speak. So there's ramifications here that we hear about from a lot of people about choicing people out of town and choicing their kids out of town, and so the effect on education. Now, obviously, we're not the only town, so this has got to be affecting a lot of different towns in the state.
Right.
Yeah, but not as many as you think.
Well,
One of the complaints that other towns around us have made is Milford got 7 million.
wait a minute.
Towns around us got 50,000.
Yeah, but wait a minute.
extra.
Towns
Right,
around
yeah.
us aren't representative of Framingham might be representative, but the ones around us are not representative of anything. And in reality, you look at the per capita family income of Milford compared to the towns around it. I mean, Hopkins is like almost double the per capita family income.
It's a scary movie
Yeah.
when you brought up in one of the previous shows that half of our families are eligible for free lunch.
Correct. Yep.
That means they're living on $34,000 a year,
Well,
a
allegedly.
family of 4.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Because remember, a lot of it's a cash economy.
Well,
Yeah.
I
but,
get
but
it,
Ed,
but
add 50% to 34.
No, I'm just saying.
You're
right.
still not.
But it's the population within the school
Yeah.
that have some type of need, right?
Yeah.
Whether it is from an economic standpoint or from a need to learning a new language standpoint, or just from an educational need to catch up standpoint, right? So when you start factoring
Yeah.
in everything, it's basically right to your point, Ed, where you've got so much educational diversity needs that's why the state needs to help
Ed,
us out.
your comment on the state has said they're gonna fund the free lunch program
Right.
completely for all students,
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
good or bad.
Well, again, it's not answering it's dabbing over something on the problem, not answering the problem. So the same way with there was a story in the Globe today. I'll just divert a little bit because I think it's obviously on a humanitarian point of view a good thing, but I'm talking about just whatever. They talked about today that there's over 1,000 people in hospitals in the state because there's no place to discharge these people to, which would be nursing homes, would mean, what do you call it?
Well, the
So,
geriatric authority
well-
can't take them.
well, therefore, what do you mean? Well, there's no.
No staffing.
Well, no, but we're talking about people who could come in like for long-term care. We have enough staffing for long-term care. The rehab is the problem with the doctor's referrals, but we confuse people, I think. But the problem is there's 1,000 people sitting in beds in hospitals because there's no place to, quote, in good faith, discharge them to.
Yep.
Because the nursing homes, some are closing, some are full, some aren't appropriate for some people because they're not even, I mean, I've heard stories of nursing homes in towns around us that would scare you, of just the lack of money that's being spent on them. Because the same people who bought some of our hospitals in the state, the ones who own, I guess I might be sued, the ones who might be bought Framingham do not spend much into the hospital infrastructure. And so things suffer because everything's the profit
Well,
margin
yeah,
today.
right. The medical industry, which it always has been, but hospital
Yeah.
care has become
Yeah.
a for-profit,
Yeah.
right? At the end of the day, they're not looking to just break even.
No.
They need to look at that bottom line and make sure that they're making a profit.
But-
So how do you do that?
Yeah, but again.
Less staffing,
Yeah.
higher pricing,
Yeah.
or charging,
Yeah.
right?
But
There's
to
ways.
get back to the higher picture is you have an administration, Mayorkas, the head of whatever he's head of, I mean, he should be impeached. Alessandro Mayorkas, I mean, he basically says the border is secure. Well, maybe someone should drive him down there and let him sit there.
But
So-
Ed, I could say I'm young, thin, and have hair.
Well, but the point is, he's not refuted by the media or by the Democratic politicians. And the thing is, this inaction at the border has caused all these consequences to ripple through the country. They are responsible for the border disaster. Under President Trump, we didn't have this. They took electing Biden as a signal to come across the border, and they were not stopped. Not that they should be screened at least, but the point is, it's changed the country irrevocably. And as the estimate
Well, when
is
you
that
start looking at adding 1 to 2% population, that's a significant
Right.
change.
And there has to be an economic impact, right? And we have no idea, even from the national level, it's billions of dollars. State level,
Well,
is it tens of millions of dollars?
certainly
and,
in Massachusetts,
and the local
yeah.
level.
Certainly in Massachusetts, with our health care requirements, Romney Care and whatever they want to call it, it's basically done a good job of putting a lot of hospitals near the edge because unreimbursed care
Right.
and walk-in using the emergency room or whatever is crazy. But they said that I guess the period in history when the number of foreign-born Americans was highest was around 1900. Okay, so you had the European group came in from Eastern and Western Europe, and so I used to see it. The World Almanac would have it, and in our case, we had situations like I'd see people had foreign-born grandparents. Bing, they listed foreign-born parents. Bing, that declined radically, but I don't know what the population of the country was then. Maybe 150 million, or probably a little less. Well, now we've got 330 million. That percentage is getting up to the highest level it ever was. So when you figure, what does that mean? That means probably 50 million of people in the population, which obviously includes people from Asia, people from whatever. And the other interesting thing about the border is we're under a mistaken thing that these are people from South and Central America.
Well, some are.
Some, but the point is, when you look at the gamut of the countries, you would almost have a menu list of the different countries. So there's Afghanistan, God bless the people coming from there, all the way down. India, Pakistan, countries in Asia, some in China, all the way up to escape.
Well, wasn't that the joke about the tennis guy, Djokovic, that he couldn't get a visa to come play in the U.S. Open? And they were making fun, saying he should have just flown to Mexico City and
Yeah.
walked across.
across.
Yeah, because he wouldn't take his COVID shots.
Right.
Australia put him. Remember,
Okay.
Australia put him in a hotel jail, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, there it was. How ironic that he could just walk across
Pretty much,
and
right.
then he'd be in the USA because they weren't testing him. But if he wanted to do it legitimately,
Yeah. But no,
So-
it's
yeah.
just interesting to see that we have an impression of people surging up, from which they are, in a way. But then you look at the other checklist of people who, imagine what they've spent to take planes to Mexico and then engage. No, that's the other question. How much has Biden enriched the drug cartels with the smuggling?
And just
Because of his policy.
drug smuggling, human
Yeah.
smuggling, right?
Exactly.
It
exactly.
happens, right?
Because they
So,
made one of the
It's-
requirements maybe to bring drugs across along with your body.
right, exactly.
but you know, the money bothers me, but bothers me much less than the impact of trafficking. When I see what these cartels
With
are
these
doing
fentanyl.
to kids,
Why is
It's
Biden
humanitarian,
incredibly
yeah.
weak on China? And is there, to me, rhetorical question, is there any truth to the long time ago that he was bought off years ago with whatever you call it? Because it's pretty clear that fentanyl is being produced in China. Now, we know China's our enemy. It's a much more serious enemy than Putin ever dreamed of being. Because, as I said before, Putin's economy in Russia is smaller than Texas's, New York's, or California's. In fact, California's double the size of the Russian economy. So all they got is the nukes and the oil and the fertilizer and everything they do. But China is relentless in its way to. Now, where are they now? They're building stuff in South America. They built stuff in Africa for a number of years. But I guess they're on a big campaign in South America and Ecuador, in other countries in South America, and of course the spy base in Cuba. So, you notice Russia's not there anymore. It's like whatever. So they're taking over.
well, I mean, Cuba's relying more and more on China because they can't get money from Russia.
Yeah.
You know, so
That was the biggest miscalculation of our foreign policy. Years ago, with a gentler hand, we could have overthrew that government, get the people some democracy, and get them a country. But the fact was, our ham-handedness allowed the radicals down there, the communists, and of course the communists down there are basically the army, which the army's enriching themselves on tourism. So,
but you know, I never understood our policy towards Cuba.
no,
At the end of the day, if I believe I can beat you, then I want to take you on. So instead of ignoring you and using a heavy hand,
yeah,
just let the people get a taste of democracy.
or the American society with the wealth we have. That's the one way to get them.
Eventually, they're going to get a taste, and they're going to want it.
Remember imagine what the young people there got. They would brag. I know a friend of mine in Milford who's very, very liberal would talk about how everyone in Cuba know how to read and write. Well, the problem is getting a book. I mean,
Okay.
and the internet is suppressed. I can't see how they've succeeded this long in doing this. Obviously, because people are escaping from there as well, which is another thing. But it's just crazy. But
But at the end of the day, Castro did some good things,
well, again,
bringing literacy to an illiterate island.
yeah, but again,
But
Now,
you're still,
you sit there and
under
say,
a lot
then
of
why
oppression.
did we not foster? Why didn't we look at China under
we couldn't foster it because a lot of people escaped who he tried to murder. So he may have done some good things, but he done a hell of a lot of bad things.
absolutely.
So the people who came to Florida were a vocal group, and they wanted to go back and overthrow him and maybe bring back democracy or try and bring back a semblance of it, because they went from a dictator to another dictator. I mean, they went for
Right.
and backed by Russia, and that must be the Russians must be looking back on how much did they bankroll Cuba over the years? Billions.
well, it was $3 billion a year in sugar subsidies,
Imagine. So in his
not counting oil.
yeah, so here's Russia that can't afford to do anything, and those days of subsidizing countries are over.
You know, I just read today or yesterday that Saudi cut back on their production,
Yeah,
and their biggest cheerleader is Russia, because
Yes.
Russia
Russia's
ramped
it.
up.
Yes.
So places like India, China, they're saying, what you did was bad, but discounted oil? That
We'll
will
take
really,
Russia. We'll
that
take
will
that.
help our economy.
Right.
well, that's what happened with India, and that's the great irony there. Irony, the green crazies in America talk about Biden wants to have the military vehicles in the country electric. Great. Imagine what our future would be. But here we are, and I can't, again, the American elite are so unrepresentative of the people. China and India are building coal-powered plants monthly.
Yeah, I was reading they're expanding their use of coal.
Okay, so the sucker bet is we're spending billions of dollars, and the winds come this way or that way. So we're spending billions of dollars when we have the two major countries in the world, because their economies together are double ours, India and China. I just read India is now the most populous country in the world. It just
Yes.
it went over China. So no offense to the Indians, but so you're building all these plants, and we're going, well, we can't do a nuclear plant, we can't do this, we can't do that. And by the way, the electric bill is going to be 5 times higher, like we found out this
Right.
last winter.
This past winter, yep.
So what is the policy? And Biden has seemed to have, this is where I can't even understand. He's brought hook, line, and sinker into this green agenda. I don't know if he even
Right.
But do
understands
you
what
think
it
needs
is.
it's
to be a
that he was
global
bought
thing.
off, or do you think that Biden is Jimmy Carter Rev 2?
No, but that was something else about China. I'm just talking about the green policy. I think, honestly, I think between the Ukraine and China, Hunter had a lot of work over there doing stuff. And I'm surprised. I wish they would be able to find this money that was supposedly channeled, because it's got to be somewhere.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the Biden family, I mean, when Obama was in, Biden's brother enriched himself building houses in the Middle East. What do you have to do with building houses? He never had built a house in his life. Well, anyway. You know,
I think
Well,
going
I
back
mean-
to, I was going to say, going back to the electric
Yeah.
vehicle, like, it's great. I think technology needs
Yeah.
to develop, but you can't force technology down,
But they are.
the American consumer. Well, that's what I'm saying. You
Yeah.
can't force technology down. When you think about, like, the affordability of an electric car, that is probably what, maybe 10% of the U.S.
Well,
population?
you got California saying
Right.
as of this year,
Right.
there's going to be no
Yeah.
non-electric cars
So-
made
Right.
or sold in California.
So we can make
Yeah, I mean,
we
it's
can make a
just,
hell of a lot of money, and I'm sure the things are already setting up where you ship a car to Arizona, you come from California,
Yeah.
you blah blah blah, and
Yeah.
the prices are going to go up. Interesting one. A friend of mine, not be named, works at a local garage and manages the garage, and so they had a older Tesla in. Battery shot. Looking at how many thousands of dollars for a new battery. So basically the owner had a piece of junk sitting there, which would require thousands of dollars to buy the battery. But then the owner goes, well, what do you want me to do with it? Because it's going to cost me, yeah, we can take the battery out and sell the rest for whatever. But what am I going to do with the battery? It's going to cost you this money just to dispose
Just
of
to
it.
dispose of
So
it,
you
exactly.
literally
Yeah.
had the great
what?
dream. Now it's worth literally, and trade-in value, minus.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, technology's there, it's developing, but it's not at a point
No.
where everybody can just be,
But
like,
imagine-
go out and buy
Well,
an
no, but
electric
think
car.
about it. When you look at the BMWs, cars on that line, what's the percentage of people that are spending $60,000 to $80,000 a year?
Right.
Well, apparently a lot in California. But
You have no
Well, but
choice.
see, that's what worries me, Ed, is when you sit there and say, we're going to make it so that you got to spend that much money.
Right.
But Al, don't you think it's a
That's-
coincidence that these people who have this lifestyle control the media, the TV stations? People are not driving Chevrolets who own the studios. The people who are on the panel shows aren't driving Chevrolets or Fords, okay? They're limousine, we used to call them limousine liberals, but we can use other terms for them now because they're woke, whatever they are. But
But
that
look
thing
at the
doesn't
Milford
work.
economy, right? We just roll
Yeah.
back to the Milford economy. How many people within the town of Milford can afford an electric vehicle, right? Because if there was a mandate by a certain date, how many of us are driving, older vehicles, maintain them, and that's how it is. So to have a true mandate at a specific time, it would cripple the economy. It's going to cripple
But see, to
a
me,
certain
I still
demographic.
believe in the power of the market. If
But-
you have the right product,
Right.
let the market assimilate.
They-
Exactly.
These people don't believe in the market. And
Right.
as we sit here right now, I challenge you to find out how much of the federal budget has been diverted through programs and incentives, and not even incentives, things we don't even know about, to push the electric vehicle idea. It's billions. And my thing is, again, you're looking at a technology where the end product, if you can't dispose of the battery, now we get to the other point. My cousins came up on the way to Maine about a month ago. And so at the beginning of the New Jersey Turnpike, what's that, about a 100-mile stretch of road, I'd say. Beginning of the thing, attention, only charging stations that are working on the New Jersey Turnpike are Teslas. This is the last station where you can charge your car with anything else. Well, they always like to stop there and walk their pups before they get on the road.
Yep.
They couldn't barely get in the station because there were lines of cars out. So you're leading your life now. You want to go somewhere. You're looking at probably 3 hours wait to charge your car.
Yep.
And then you're on the road, and then you've got to look for another place. Now, that's why Tesla, I guess, first opened their things to Ford, now it's Chevrolet.
Yeah,
but they're
you can
getting,
get an adapter for
they're
your
getting
Chevy.
a billion
to that-
eight. Musk is going to get $1.8 billion a year from the income from this.
Yeah, into that. Recently traveled, and Hertz had a rental car, Tesla rental car on special. I'm like, oh, this would be a great idea. Well, on the return trip, I found out you have to return the Tesla with like at least 75% battery.
Like an empty tank.
So if I'm driving like a couple hundred miles away from a location to the local airport, now I have to build that time in, find the charging station, charge it up, wait it out while I'm charging up, then I can drive into the airport, as opposed to my gas-powered rental car that I had, drove my 200 miles, pulled off at the nearest gas station to the airport, took the 15 minutes to fill up the tank, and then drove over. So, again, the infrastructure, the idea is it's just not there yet.
But you're a bad person for not choosing the Tesla, according to...
And I wanted to.
No, you know what? I'm just saying,
right?
In the mind of the eco-terrorists out there.
Right, exactly. Now, why couldn't I return it to Hertz Rent-A-Car, at 5% battery life and not have to worry about it?
Oh, they
but
can,
then
but it's like,
right.
remember when you bring it back
with
an empty tank,
exactly.
They charge you
It's that
how many gallons?
$8 a gallon.
Exactly. So why am I going to, what's the incentive?
I think
for
the
me?
problem too we're running into is that the rare earth minerals,
China.
they're all in
Afghanistan.
China. I mean,
Afghanistan.
now you look from an ecology point of view, when they start strip mining in the U.S. to get lithium and all, it's worse than the coal mines used to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
The Globe ran an article, and they were attacked, even by the nutty Globe was attacked by the craziers, because they mentioned that Maine has some of the greatest lithium deposits, and they were called, basically you're going to club a seal on the beach. I mean, the nuts came out in the comments or whatever. And then, of course, people egged them on or whatever and go, not in my backyard.
Right.
So Ed,
electricity's great until
somebody
we
that's
have to
been
do something.
in the Republican Party forever, who's going to lead the Republicans out of this mess? Do you believe it's Trump?
No, of course not.
I don't think people seriously.
Well,
if I was a Democrat,
yes.
I'd want Trump to be alive.
But we've just been saying this.
Right.
That if CNN, if he took a spaceship somewhere and disappeared, CNN, they'd be like panicked. We've got to invent another Trump.
But then the governor of Florida, governor of Texas.
The more profound thing is that what Trump represents is not my style of Republican, okay? My style of Republican is, I'm probably a little more conservative socially than some other, but would be a Baker, who Republicans in Massachusetts.
Baker, a Weld.
Well, no, not a Weld. He had too many, whatever.
Well, in the
adult
early
beverages.
the early days.
Salucci, Romney, Swift, that sort of thing. But what's happened is, in a lot of the state parties, it's amazing that Donald Trump, whose personal life was sort of libertine, to put it mildly. I mean, he's never been bothered by being faithful or being whatever. But the evangelicals and many people who are conservative in these state parties embraced him. So, I mean, it's crazy to think in Massachusetts that half the members of the Republican State Committee would be Trump guys and also be that way socially. The party in Texas is that way. The party in North Carolina is that way. I don't think it is in Florida because DeSantis has got a pretty firm grip of it. But in a lot of states, they're very extreme social agenda people, which isn't my style of Republican. So you're battling against that too as well. So I don't know who the leadership would be, but there's a big split between the old style Republicans, who would be for foreign policy interventions, who would be pro-Ukrainian government, and you've got the Trumpist people over here, America First people, and some of the crazy members of Congress. I say though the same way, the Democrat Party's got their own problems because you have Biden who's sort of a semi-figurehead presiding over something, but the progressives don't really like him or respect him. That's pretty clear. So you got the AOCs and the other ones in there who are pretty much to the left of him, Bernie Sanders. But they're smart enough to know that's the deal with the devil. He can give them the presidency, and they can manipulate or use whatever.
But what choice do they have? Whether it is a Trump or a Trump-like person or a Democrat of any flavor.
Well-
They can't go to the right. It's just
Who's to the right? What do you mean?
the Democratic voters, the Democrats.
Well, but
Right.
no, but in the past, Trump is not palatable for them. But in the past, a Bush sort of Republican or whatever got a lot of crossover votes and a lot of. Forget about the people in the party. How about the independents, who are the majority of the voters in the country? That's where Trump's
Right,
fails.
they're looking for that
And
person
Trump
that's
isn't
just
it.
to the left or right or center,
And-
right?
and Trump-
As opposed to
Trump-
being way to the
Trump
left
isn't
or way
it,
to the
yeah.
right.
But what
Yeah.
have the Republicans offered up for somebody who's just to the right or left of
Well,
center?
they're just trying to say, how can you win when you have Al? It's a perfect storm for the Republicans because the media, and I'm not talking about Fox News or Newsmax or whatever. The big media are dominated by leftists. Period. Why would they ever let Trump out of their sights? Because he's the beatable candidate. So
Yep.
they're not going to give anything. And my other question is, and everyone asks me this, a lot of people do, who is running Biden? Because it's pretty clear. Someone's got to be pulling the strings there because he does not know what's going on. When he went on that trip to Ireland, he came back and they had I don't know whether it was the Easter egg roll or something in the lawn, and one of the kids asked him how his trip was. He didn't remember where he had been. So what I'm trying to ask is, that's sort of a gratuitous sort of slap at him, but who is running the show in there?
Right.
Is it his wife? Is it Obama? Who is running the show in the White House to direct our foreign policy? Can anyone answer that? It's clear it couldn't be him.
It's clear that we don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And it's clear that
It isn't him.
it's
Well,
not
I mean,
him.
the selection of Kamala Harris.
Well, yeah, but that's not even.
No, but that to me was the most profound way of saying nobody's going to assassinate me because you get her.
Oh.
I mean, you know, it's-
well, and she's proven every minute of it.
Yeah.
And you sit there and say, as the number 2 person in our government, what has she done?
Well, it shows you how you don't need it.
Exactly. And there's already a question of the fact that is she going to be on his ticket again?
Of course she is. Yeah.
Right? But there's question to that.
Yeah.
Right? The media questions it. So that's the one thing is, for as much as they go after Trump, they at least are questioning
Well, they'll play the racial issue.
and
there.
her, right? Just because of the fact that she's just not probably qualified to be
Yeah,
president.
yeah, yeah.
That it's a scary.
I think also that one of the
Part.
things in the country that's really troubling is the constant bringing up whenever there's any kind of. We talked about this before, how the elite groups have attacked the police departments in the country. It's being reflected in the fact that police are retiring or moving to other states in record numbers. Why would a man be a New York City policeman when he starts at $50,000 salary and gets the treatment he would get? And why there's people in the country, sports figures and influential figures, who breed contempt of the police, contempt of law and order, and base everything on an alleged racial thing, even when it's a black policeman or a policewoman or
But didn't that
whatever.
play out? I mean, for the longest time, maybe I'm missing something, but I thought the far left was pushing defunding police and police are bad. And now all of a sudden, our president is saying that he's bringing money to increase police. And
But Al, the point is there. Once you've knocked it down, how long does it take to build it up?
Yeah.
And that's what crime
right.
is being
and
reflected in the
yeah,
cities.
it's faster to knock
Oh.
the legs out than
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
sustain
Yeah.
or
well, that
build
to me
that,
is silly
that
when they sit there
confidence,
and
right?
say in Minneapolis, crime has gone up, in New York it's gone up, and
Right.
the police force has gone down.
Yeah.
There's no
Right.
reason from the time I spent in Minneapolis that there would ever be that situation, except, again, if you've seen the new Minneapolis City Council, they had a meeting where competing Somali forces in the Democratic City Committee got into a violent altercation, at a state convention to nominate people for the city council, and these are Somalis. So citizens, new citizens who are, so that's where, what's her name comes from, the one, this Oman out there, yeah,
Yes.
she's Somali. So if you'd think if you were an immigrant, you'd come in and you'd be thankful for whatever, but apparently the group of people are just, they came in with an
agenda,
With
right.
an agenda. In Minneapolis of all places, is it like, whatever. And then look at the mayor race in Chicago. They got rid of Lightfoot and they put a person who was even more radical.
Yeah.
I guess we can thank the teachers union for that.
They
one,
got rid
but
of Lightfoot and put in Lightweight.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, it's surprising to me because some things just seem so obvious. You stop supporting your police department, you cut back on the police department, and then you're amazed that crime goes up.
Crime goes up, right?
Well, imagine our first responders, just to go back locally, in Milford. So you have a first-class police department, a first-class fire department. And you see some of the young recruits they've got in the police department, some military people, some from other towns. And the whole fire department is basically all new people from the time I knew it, because I knew one of my buddies, Teddy DiPaolo, his father had been the chief, and he was like the oldest member. So a whole new generation of people came in.
Be
And
careful, I graduated with him.
Yep.
Don't call
Well,
him old.
Well, you're oldish, how's that? So anyway,
Ish.
but just to think of, so these young guys and women come in, and now they have to deal with a community where there's, language barriers or whatever. I just relayed a thing. I was up at UMass for some procedure, and the man had been out with me in the waiting room, so we're in adjacent beds, and he said to me in pretty good English, he goes, I'm going to need a translator in Chinese. I said, oh, do you speak, he goes, Mandarin. So anyway, so when the nurse comes over, tell her. Bing, 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 right on the phone, and all of a sudden there's a nice lady on the phone speaking Mandarin with him.
Yeah.
And I said, how many languages do you offer? She said, over 100. She goes, sometimes some of the more esoteric ones, it's interesting, but so he's having a conversation, then then she translates to the doctor or the nurse or whatever, his contact information, where he could be picked up. But all these extra things is what the cost of, not say doing business, but if you're in a fire department or whatever, you go to different situations and you've got to sort of extricate what's going on, or domestic situations where it's a different cultural issue, and you've got to try and assess what's going on, and you're not familiar with the language.
So what does the Republican Party have to do? Because in my mind, there's 30% of the voters are going to be anybody but Trump. You're never going to change their mind. You get to the square states, the middle of the country.
Oh yeah, you keep saying that, and you made a lot of money out of the square states in your day. So,
But still, that's where your diehard
not really,
conservatives are.
not really, but anyway.
But
But
Yeah, but the point is, the fact
it's a
that you're-
handful of states
the fact
that are
you're
really determined.
referencing everything to Trump is the problem.
Well,
It's
that's
our
what I'm
problem, but
saying.
it's also your problem.
How do you get the Republican Party to get over Trump?
Well, maybe the fact is, if this indictment had come down sooner, but I have a feeling that it's going to play out. I have a strange feeling he's going to be convicted of some of the charges, and then the country's going to be faced with a dilemma. But I hear more and more of my friends who are formerly very pro-Trump just say, why doesn't he just withdraw from the race? I'm hearing
Yes.
that.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's
Well,
the
his ego, right? He doesn't want
No,
it.
but I'm
It's his
saying, these are people who just regular people who are common sense people.
Right.
They're going, why doesn't he just withdraw from the race? They're not saying it against him, but just all the stuff that's stacked up.
Right,
Because
exactly.
they'd rather have Biden out of there than Trump.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%.
But who?
Well, I don't know. What's the point?
That's my biggest thing is I'm looking for an alternative.
Right. Who's that magic candidate that's
And
going
by
to
the way, you're not going to
sway the Trump
get
voters?
a fair play in the media, whoever that candidate is, because the media wants Trump around so he can be defeated. And there's no way even Biden could lose to Trump unless some disaster happened. Because Trump probably will not be the nominee.
But Trump pulled 49% of the people in the U.S. There's something there.
That is the point, but that isn't the thing. He's still the weakest of the candidates. I just said to you, I think there's at least 2 or 3 of those people on the stage who could trounce Biden.
Right.
But they're not going to get there.
Right. And did those people vote for Trump or against Biden?
And that's why DeSantis, in a way,
right.
I think DeSantis was premature. He should have waited 4 years, let all this crap settle, and then go for the nomination. let someone run against, however,
Mm-hmm.
but especially when you have the legalities and everything playing out,
Yeah.
let the dust settle, however the courts are going to settle
Maybe.
it, and let
Yeah.
the courts decide Trump's
Right.
fate.
But when Trump came on board, like he just came on gangbusters, right? I don't even think he probably had any idea that he was going to get as much traction in this.
We also never thought he was going to win.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, that too.
But we
So,
also-
does that next Republican candidate do that same thing? Just
No.
come on board, not in that same realm
remember, he
of
faced-
Trump,
yeah.
but
But he-
they have to
Yeah.
distance themselves
But-
from the other candidates to make themselves
But his
person to vote
the
for.
thing that's distorted his whole view was the phony Russiagate dossier. That was a fraud from beginning to end. The media would never say it. You remember our intelligence chief said the
Right.
Hunter Biden thing was Russian disinformation. So Trump is obsessed with the fact of how he got screwed, I use my language for that, in the beginning.
Right.
With a baseless allegation that people realized was a phony allegation.
Right.
So he's based all his other behavior on that, unfortunately, because he can't see beyond it, which is too bad.
Right.
It is, because when you think about it, and you ask the fundamental question, we better off now than we were before the election? We'll see. Inflation, yeah, it's down to 4%, but
right.
it was at 2%.
Almost in
I'm
everything.
paying $3.60 a gallon or whatever, $3.40
Yeah,
a gallon. You know,
How about groceries?
Right.
So,
I mean,
$80 to go buy
everything in the world
groceries.
says, I may not like Trump, but I did like his effect.
I can't get over the disastrous, murderous withdrawal from Afghanistan. What he did to those people just to celebrate an anniversary, because his wife told him to celebrate an anniversary of one of the things that I guess we did in the Middle East. It was an anniversary of our arrival in Afghanistan.
Okay.
We need to think of the thousands of people, and the media, again, don't cover it, what's going on in Afghanistan right now.
But again, isn't that Jimmy Carter Rev 2 and the whole...
No, but I'm just saying, I'm talking about it. Maybe it is, but the cost of human life and death was astronomical.
Right, and I'm surprised that hasn't made the news. Really, I'm kind of it's a powder keg there, right? Now,
also, the
now
fact
that
that-
it's we've lost control,
Yeah.
and we know what sort of generation of
Yeah.
ideology
But you know
is going
something,
on there.
What
Chris?
about-
It's a
when
powder
they
keg.
say what a surprise it is that the Taliban is taking away the rights of women.
Right.
Why
No,
is
it
that?
isn't. Who's
If
that
I,
that's a
That's
surprise?
if I
shouldn't
take
be
a
a
hammer
surprise.
and I swing it at my foot,
Right.
why am I going to be surprised when it hits
And
that it hurts?
yeah.
where are the ladies from The View and everyone else on this stuff? They never
Right.
say boo about it because
Right.
it's not convenient, because it's not part of the
Well,
agenda.
it's out of sight and it's out of mind
Yeah.
too, right? When was
But,
the last
uh,
time it was covered?
We'll go another 2-3 months,
well,
get back together.
maybe a little, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a little sooner if you
And
want.
what can we say next time? What's going to happen next? The end of atomic war or whatever? Because
please
we,
don't
we,
even-
we come one thing to another here, so it's like
But as always,
Yeah.
to our 6 loyal viewers, thank you for joining us.
I heard it's 8.
That's 30% increase.
There you go.
Hey, inflation.
Oh God!
Inflation.
May God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Good night, all.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Al.
Not too long since I've been home. Been running all my life just searching for my soul.